Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio.
And for this Monday Mini, I'm going to do a quick timestamp, which is October 25th, 2024. And yeah, it's been a stressful year with all the ups and downs of campaigning. So, FYI, content warning, we are talking about elections and early voting. Not a lot. We're not doing too in-depth of this, but we are going to talk about it. So if you're like, maybe pass on. But like I said, this is more of like informational about what's happening around the world. Nothing too deep, FYI. Anyway, and dear God, the amount of texts that I have poured in because of this election has been ridiculous. Like I have now updated my phone because it took a while to a new system which lets me put in spam blocks. Like they do it for me and every single one of them, because I went to look to make sure I didn't miss any important messages, because I am that anxious, Anney, that I'm like, oh no, what if this was actually something that I need to know? I went and checked through, but no, every single one of them are campaign or fundraising texts. And I mean hundreds.
Really?
Yeah, and some of them as of late have been coming through. So I'm telling you, I'm pretty sure my phone, or at least the services for a lot of people's phone, has been working overtime trying to be like, no, this is spam, this is spam, this is real, this is spam. Anyway, it's a lot. It's very stressful. And just let me say, I think our system is broken. And I say this in my opinion. I'm not putting this on the show. I'm not putting it on our producer. I'm not putting it on Anney. This is just my own opinion. I think the system is broken and there needs to be pretty big changes, and that all the heated debates around that our system alone, I think, is a legitimate debate and that needs to be talked about. However, as we understand that humans are not perfect, don't put anybody on a pedestal. You can admire people, but understand that they are not perfect, and eventually opinions are going to happen that you are not going to agree with. It's probably going to disappoint you. And the system has really limited us in so many ways. The electoral college sucks. Anyway, with that, here on Sminty, we have been really conflicted on so much because we see the issues at hand and understand that it isn't a single issue when it comes to voting. It's not just one thing on the platform and that's how we vote. That's not what we think. We are looking at the totality of the future, though, in understanding that this is a bigger picture. A post by Black Feminist Future Action Fund, or BFFAF as they go by, put it in such an amazing way. I think that it's something that I agree with, especially when it comes to the Democratic candidate and current Vice President Kamala Harris, which is not a hard name, people. I swear to even people who are voting for her still saying it wrong. Kamala Harris. Drives me crazy. Anyway, Kamala Harris. And they write, she, quote, has a strong record and is out front and leading on some of our fundamental issues: abortion access, maternal health care, economic advances for middle-class people, LGBTQ plus equity, etc. But we find a lot of her previous policy positions and the policies she's putting forward to be conservative. The ongoing genocides, immigration, fracking, etc. But they also speak, BFFAF, on the current fight at hand, saying, quote, we also refuse to be idle while a fascist attempts to occupy the White House again. There's too much at stake in fascist control up and down our ballots. This is a consideration of the ground we want to fight on, is a consideration for fighting fascism. So I think that if you want to go look at their post, go look at it on Instagram. I'm sure they have it on their Twitter as well. And they do an amazing slide of a whole conversation, and they talk about their organization as a whole, in endorsement, and what they chose and how they chose to endorse whomever or whether to endorse anybody. And I think it's a great conversation because they put it, again, better than I could on my own when I was like, this is a conversation. This is trying to be transparent and really having a hard time voicing it. And I think they did a good job. And yes, this means that we understand that we have to keep fighting and putting pressure on those who will be in office. Also, as a reminder, the local elections are just as important. Listen to our previous episodes with Melody and State Representative Park Cannon. These are really important campaigns and elections that you need to pay attention to, look into, and actually research, and can help shape the future of our politics and choices. So even some of the conversations we're having about the system as a whole, this shapes it. So it's really important. Looking at Georgia alone, which has become a swing state, you can see the continued fight on trying to get citizen votes to not only be counted, but to be safely completed. You can see how poll workers had to sue due to the amount of violence and fear that they have been put through, thanks to not only big politicians, but local politicians. And in fact, taking some of those big politicians' properties. And I love every bit of that. Get his mansions, ladies. Get his mansions.
His cars. Yeah.
Anyway, going back on. And again, we have to look at this as a part of the bigger picture, just like the Supreme Court, which has caused more changes in the last 4 years due to the changes in its new appointments. So these are, unfortunately, lifetime terms, which shouldn't be. Very disappointed in people who we looked up to and allowing some of these things to happen, honestly, thinking that they were doing something better, thinking that it was impossible that Donald Trump would have been elected, but it wasn't impossible, and it really f***ed us over, for the lack of better terms. And these are some things that we need to look at and understand in the bigger picture, again, with the caveat that we don't completely agree, and there are things that we are concerned about, even with the better candidate, quote unquote, like I'm putting that in quotes. So just recently, the Georgia Supreme Court actually struck down a ploy by Republicans to try to possibly deny election results or the such. So here's a little bit from the AP News about it. Quote, one rule would require 3 poll workers to count ballots, not votes, by hand once polls closed. The other 2 had to do with the process to certify county election results. Democrats and some voting rights groups had raised concerns that the rules could be used by allies of Trump's to slow or deny certification or election results, or to cast doubts on results if the former president loses the presidential election to Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris. So, of course, this once again leads to the groundwork of trying to invalidate an election result. We've seen it happen. We even know it's happening, much like what they tried to do in the previous election. But many, including some Republicans, see this ruling as necessary, and that the attempt to change these rules are more deceptive than anything else. So a lot of people who would consider themselves Republicans really felt like, oh God, what are they doing? Understood the gravity of what these rule changes could mean. So thank God that has been struck down. I'm honestly surprised. I'm not going to lie. I was really scared. So with that, early voting has commenced. Anney, you voted on the day of, right?
The day it started.
How was your experience?
It was really great. Unfortunately, because we have seen so many voting restrictions in Georgia, I had a plan because I am very fortunate. I work from home. My polling place is like 2 blocks from here. You can do in early voting, if anyone's listening in Fulton, you can vote any polling place, but the one not on the day of, okay? But before early voting, you can vote anywhere. But I was just going to walk over and see how crowded it was, because if you work from home, if you have a flexible schedule, I've read you should not go during the mornings, not during lunch, not during times when people who don't have that flexible schedule should go, because the line will get so long and people will turn away because they have children or they have things to do. So I was like, well, I'll go check. I want to just get it done because it's bothering me and I'm nervous. And I just wanted to check that off my list. And I went, and there was a line, but it was moving so quickly. It was so organized. It was, as we've discussed before, mostly Black women. It was at a library near me. And they would you'd go and get your card, and then there was somebody who would direct you to the nearest open machine, and then there was somebody that would direct you to it was just so smooth. I was like in and out, even though the line looked like it could be a bit of a wait. It was great. I got it done really quickly, and I thought for sure, probably I'll walk by and I'll think I'll come back later, but no, but I didn't. Had a great time.
Had a great time. You know what? My experience was not like that. So I went the following week, last week, if you're listening when this was published, and we just went. I kind of got nervous because it was around lunchtime, and I was trying, because you had told me that. I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I don't want to be in the way. My partner and I both work from home, so it's not a big deal. But when we arrived, there was nobody in line. There was nobody. And in fact, what was so funny is I walked in, and it's a library. Can we talk about how much I love libraries? I love libraries. And this library was so cute in this area. And I'm like, oh my God, it's amazing. So we walked in, and we couldn't quite figure, like, we saw the arrows, but there was like, the way they taped it off, just in case there was going to be a big line, kind of confused because it was emptied. So I don't know which side to go. But the woman at the green, she's like, no, come here, like directing us and then telling us where to go. And it was all Black women, but one person who was a Black man. So it was like, that's exactly, and they were all older, and I love that. And they were like vying for our attention, like, come over here. It was the cutest thing. And so it felt like, I'm like, oh, I get choices, and they want me to come and talk to them instead of being like as if we were a nuisance. And the woman who did my stuff was so sweet, was like talking to me and she gave me a pitch. She's like, yeah, all you need to do is this. The kindest person. And you could tell she was actually happy to be there. So this is week 2 of early voting, and she was still excited, obviously, to be manning the station. When I went and finished everything, I had already researched at the beginning what I wanted to do, looking through the videos. TikTok has really changed in information, giving information. I will say, of course, there's misinformation, but if you look through it and try to find like people who are more aligned with your views and actually look up several videos, not just one, several videos, and finding your trusted people, it's great information. Because these propositions, they're awful because they're worded so badly that oftentimes I feel like I'm being tricked and will just say no across the board because they can always bring it back. It's harder to repeal. So I was like, all right. But I've had really good like moments with getting information. So thank you to those who are providing that information, who are putting in that work for us. Thank you. But after I got done, like I uploaded everything. The woman who had greeted me was also the one that helped me upload everything. And she was like, all right, when you see this number go up, that means your vote counted. And she was so excited. To let me know that. And then as soon as it went up, she's like, yay, you did it, and gave me a little sticker. That was one of the best experiences. And again, all of my experiences have not been bad. There was one day that we went voted, I think it was the day of, and they actually had like food trucks around to encourage people to vote and get like free food or whatever. Not free food, but you know what I mean. And it was a long line, but this was so in and out. There was nobody. I think 2 people came in after us. They were just as excited to be told where to go, all these things. It was a lovely experience. And being at the library also gave an opportunity to my partner to get his library card, which was seamless. Going into this library, they had artwork. They have knitting clubs. They have knitting clubs. They have Christmas card making clubs. Like it is the cutest thing. We are not taking full advantage of it. BT dubs. I also was just on the show with Margaret for Cool People Who Did Cool Stuff, and we talked about libraries and one specific indigenous librarian from Puerto Rico who came to New York and changed things for the better. So if y'all need to go listen to that episode because it's a fantastic episode. And Margaret actually does a whole reading from the native librarian who had been telling folklore of their area. It was so great. Anyway. All that to say, I love libraries. So if you get a chance, I bet there's a library for early voting, that is, that are holding the voting. So you should go to there and then make sure you go get your library card because it's awesome. I didn't know you can get free subscriptions to like New York Times. Did you know that?
Yeah, you can rent movies, you can rent fishing poles at some places, you can rent statues at some places.
Yeah.
They do a lot of stuff.
Y'all go check it out. Anyway, so it was a great experience for those who are discouraged or anxious, because this can be an anxious process, especially with everything you have heard, with all the like processes that have happened. Go and do it. And usually the official people are cool. Usually. So I could be wrong, but I have yet to see actual people who are poll workers to be any part of the problem.
Yeah, I haven't either. I just read today about worries about that, but I have not either.
Right.
And I'll also say, like, I know you're probably tired of hearing it, but even I did it. Check to make sure you're registered to vote. Because even if you're not, you have time, but you don't want to find out the day
when you get there.
So check. Just check.
Oh, because of all of the things that we've had in Georgia and many other
Mm-hmm.
places where they're throwing them out, I think I did it every week. And then right before we left, I checked mine and my partner's because I
I
was
was like,
freaking out.
I was too. And so it's easy. It's also very
Yes.
easy. So yeah.
Also, that's where you can find your district. Because I didn't know. I was like, who, what? Because the sample ballots had all of them. I was like, no, I'm not voting for all these people. So
Yeah,
that's a good way to find.
Massive sample ballot they give if you don't specify is terrifying. You need to find
Go check it out. Make sure you're looking.
It's like 27 pages.
I mean, in the state of Georgia, we have some state Supreme Court justices up for election, and there are a couple of people who are in the running. None of them were in my district, but I was like, dang, I wish they were. I don't wish they were, but I wish I had seen the ballot for those who did. So those are important.
Yes.
So yeah, we did have some good experiences. And honestly, if you haven't heard, here in the U.S., early voting has hit some amazing records. According to a CNN article written by Zachary B. Wolf, at least 18 million early voters have been cast as of October 22nd. So I'm sure, like, I was a part of the afterwards, so there's got to be more, right? And in our state of Georgia, at least 70% of the votes have already been cast due to early voting. So the numbers are already kind of there. And not surprisingly, it has been more women during the early voting, but not too much more. Here's a quote from that CNN article. Quote, more women, making up 55% of the early votes so far, have voted in Georgia compared with men, who have made up 45%, according to the ballots of which Catalyst has data. Biden won more than half of Georgia women in 2020, and women also accounted for more than half the voters that year, according to the CNN exit polls. So you got to know. And the majority of those voters are from the ages 50 to 65 and older, which they made up like 70% of those voters so far. I kind of was surprised by that number.
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense. I wonder if absentee ballots are included in that number. I didn't notice. So there's a lot out there, and there's a lot we could speak on. And we, again, apologize for the lack of episodes that may have been expected. We, like most of you, have definitely hit that election fatigue. See past episode, we talked about that, with an overwhelming amount of anxiety that hits when it comes to being transparent with the listeners. So Anney and I have talked back and forth about doing bigger episodes and having conversations about it. And I think for us, and for me specifically, the debilitating fear and knowing that we do hold a responsibility in the information that we provide really holds back some of the things that we want to talk about. We really wish we could go back to episodes of just talking about women in pockets, where the minute that a Kristen and Caroline episode started talking more politically, they started getting backlash, and we know this. And after their exit, Bridget and Emily stepped their toes in, knowing that they would be talking about it. Bridget, I know I've talked about it before, as being a woman of color, a Black woman specifically, cannot ignore some of those bigger politically charged, racially charged episodes. Myself, as a woman of color, Asian woman, can't avoid that either. After 2016, things changed drastically. When President Obama was here, things changed pretty drastically as well. But when it came to women's issues, when it came to marginalized peoples and their issues, 2016 changed a lot. So we know that we have a responsibility in voicing truths and facts, and also like being transparent in letting you know who we are as humans. Like, that's podcasting. That's podcasts. And podcasting in itself has changed as we know it. The way that it is split and the interest and how it's become a place of friendships, honestly, and like relationships that you want to listen to. So with all of that, we do apologize if you had expected more, but understand that we, just like you, are going on this roller coaster ride and trying to really unlearn and learn things as we go along with the way the times have changed.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny though, because you were asking me like about politics on podcasts and like, does Trump go on podcasts? And you said, has he done Joe Rogan? Guess what?
He's doing general good. Yeah. Did
I
he said he was going to invite Kamala too, didn't he?
have no idea.
I don't know if
but
he actually did.
it was just funny to me because we had just talked about
Yeah. And like, yeah, Kamala Harris being on Call Your Daddy. And that brought a lot of backlash to her, who she actually invited Trump too, and he just refused. She made that a point. But she also talks about the fact that, yeah, she thinks that women's issues are a big, important part of her podcast, so she can't understand why people are shocked.
Yeah, there's a strange thing that's happening right now.
There's a lot happening.
Honestly, everything feels like a fever dream some days.
It does. Absolutely. It does. But all that to say, we just want to lay that out there because I think you might not have cared. You might rather us not spoke about it. But either way, it would be disingenuous for us not to kind of like be transparent and let you know where we are at with that, especially with the elections being so close. And yeah, there's so much more we do want to tap into that overlap with other things. So politically, like we talked about it in religious trauma, which, yeah, you know, we did a whole unexpected series on, remember? And misogynoir that can't be ignored with elections and this election specifically. Also, an interesting amount of women who have been talking about lying to their husbands or boyfriends about who they were voting for, which I think is something that we need to explore because there's definitely been like, so one of the biggest phrases in different like relationship TikTok is people will say, I hope that a love like this will never find me, or I hope a love like this will find me, or like, God, I've been waiting for this. Like just kind of like these specific phrases. But like I have seen more and more women being like, I can't tell my husband who I'm voting for because he'll get mad at me or whatnot, but I lied and told him I vote for Trump. Like that's the insinuation. And then many like women stitching those videos and being like, girl, you need to rethink your relationship, which kind of comes back to that whole conversation once again about like, should politics be a factor in your relationship? And once like things because of Trump and because of the extremism on both sides have come about, it's become a really heated debate and issue, which it wasn't once upon a time, right? Supposedly. But I find that interesting.
Well, did you see the viral video from a woman from Georgia in her 90s voted for the first time?
Yes.
Because her husband had just died and he was like, I don't think you should vote.
I'm not allowing you to vote. And then she got to, but they're possibly getting into trouble. Did you see that?
No.
Because her daughter had helped her, and they're calling that fraud.
Oh. She seems so excited to do it. What I saw.
Excited, and they're causing this to be like, you made her vote for Harris. Or I don't know who she voted for.
See who
I don't know if she did or not. There was this uproar, and I was like, what is happening? This is supposed to be fun and joyful.
Nothing anymore.
Anyway, I don't know if it was Harris. But there was cries of like, this is voter fraud. An assumption because she was a woman. Yeah.
Yes.
She was a woman being told she can vote for the first time in an issue without with her husband not denying that right from her.
Yeah. I have to say, I've seen it. I have seen this before with friends of mine where their boyfriend is very controlling about like, you're voting for this person. And it always made me so uncomfortable. Like,
yeah, that's that conversation of like, you need to rethink.
No, I don't think this is good.
Red flag. Anyway, we're gonna have to come back and talk about that later. I think we'll do that after the fact when we had a break from everything. But so a lot's happening. Choices are being made. Hopefully, eventually, we can actually have our voices heard on a bigger scale. Let us know how things are going for you in your state, about your voting plans, if you have some, or things that are occurring. I still have that knitted I voted.
Yeah, me too.
Blanket.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
I think it was
Are we supposed to send that back?
Daughter.
Are we supposed to send it back?
No.
Okay.
It was a gift.
I
think it was the daughter of a listener.
Yeah.
Named Dawn. Oh, you could write in and yell at me. But yeah, sent us these beautiful, because Georgia is a swing state now.
Yeah.
Like, come out and vote. I voted.
Yeah. Which is fantastic. Which eventually I'm going to talk about, talk about needlepoint / punch needling, y'all. That's going to be an episode soon. Or at least on Monday, Vinny. But anyway, I still have that. So thank you.
I do too. Yes.
But for any other listeners, let us know what's going on with you, how you're doing. How are you doing
God.
in this season?
Yes. How are you doing? You can let us know in many ways. You can email us at stephaniemomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff One Never Told You. We have a TeePublic store and we have a book you can find wherever you get your books. Thanks as always to our super producer Christina, our executive producer Maya, and our contributor Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff One Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.